Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for Alaska Weather and this Sunday's show. Looking at the warning and advisory chart here, we've got wind advisories continuing early this evening. In fact, only for the next hour or so. Winds are diminishing by the minute up there, but still seeing gusts in the 30 to 40, maybe 45 mile an hour range, mostly west of Mentasta Pass, Delta Junction, and on over toward Healy, and then back down the west side as well. And for the Kuskokwim Valley, that's back here over the eastern areas toward the Alaska Range, and is no way connected farther out there to the west. And all of these winds are due to expire at any time here by 6, 7, maybe 8 p.m. this evening. And this is a high wind watch for the Bristol Bay area. Pretty windy today, and another storm coming up could bring an increase in the winds tomorrow here across the area. Possible gusts up to 75 miles an hour. I'll have to watch and see how that develops. Right now, just a wind watch out for that area. And back here to the west, got a freezing rain advisory out that, for this evening. And actually, the advisory stays out for freezing rain here through noon Monday, tomorrow. And what's going on is the freezing rain should diminish and end this evening and then redevelop again tomorrow morning. And so that will be out until noon. And moving on to the satellite imagery, yesterday's showing we had a pretty good push here to the west and northwest of that band of moisture. Jet stream also shifting westward here, and that brought those strong winds in across Bristol Bay and those areas yesterday, with the rainfall shifting from Friday. The heaviest rainfall here along the North Gulf Coast up into the southeast interior had pulled all the way back out to the west here in association with the redevelopment of the jet back through this area and the building area of high pressure over the Gulf of Alaska and the southeast coast, which resulted in a lot of clearing and light wind conditions as well as dry weather. This band shifting up to the north, spreading warm air northward, now all the way to the Arctic coast, and the cold air out here retreating back to the west and all spilling southward way down off the chart there. In fact, that push of cold air all the way down to 30 north in that area. And then we're watching this area here, cloudiness, caught up in the jet stream, so rapidly moving northward, a band developing right through here. And as we roll through this again, you can just see things beginning to gather down here, clouds. And today you'll see that moved right on up, and we had a band really weakening as it pushed northward. That just brought a shot of very light rain or sprinkles as that moved northward. There was some freezing rain, a little bit of freezing rain reported at Squetna today, and the heaviest precipitation is back over west of Cook Inlet and then northward there west of the Parks Highway. Nothing really on the east side of the inlet from Palmer, Anchorage, right down to Kenai and even Homer. Homer only getting 1/100th of an inch of rain today in the last 24 hours. But this system just sort of weakening here. It didn't really move through. Big area high pressure here to the east, so this thing stopped dead in its tracks and just sort of dissipated right over the Kenai Peninsula. So that kept the light rain going much of the day here. Seward on up into Whittier and a little bit over into the Cordova area there. As I mentioned, Homer only picking up 1/100th of an inch. Cordova got about 2/100ths of an inch. The heaviest rainfall again was back out here to the west, even farther out to the west, with Unalaska picking up about 1.5 inches of rain due to this moisture here streaming westward and interacting with the Arctic boundary over the area there. Most of the snow was Nikolsky westward in a narrow band, and then all the rain coming into the Unalaska area. By contrast, Cold Bay only picking up 0.03 of an inch in the last 24 hours. And then farther to the north, St. Paul got about 1/4 of an inch of rain. Again, warmer conditions pushing westward there, so that all falling in the form of rain. And then tonight we'll see these winds increase once again. This system pushing northward toward Kodiak Island, so the winds will be on the increase, and the rain also will be on the increase with some light rain possibly reaching the North Gulf Coast once again, and actually hooking up with the leftover moisture here. So it'll be kind of a intermittent on again, off again light rain or drizzle condition with periods of fog, and that'll tend to increase late tonight and in toward tomorrow morning, as well as the winds will hold on, really won't end much at all. They may drop off a little bit tonight, and then you can see the gradient tightening up as this next low center comes northward. But the interior looking very nice, upper level high pressure, keeping conditions dry, that's for sure, and the variable cloud pattern here. Some patchy areas of low clouds and fog could develop, and a little bit more of a breeze here will reduce the threat of any extensive areas of dense fog over the southeast coast, but it will be dry all through this area with just some variable clouds. A narrow band of snow, but that west of the Pribilofs and mostly west of the eastern Aleutians there, and even Nikolsky. But get into those gusty north winds. There's a narrow band of gale force northwesterlies today, and that's going to remain right through this area, just catching Atka. And high pressure will move over the Adak area in advance of this storm, which will be pushing gale force winds and warmer conditions for some snow changing over to rain out there for Shemya until the front pushes through, and then the colder air will come in and later on and change it back over to snow showers. But again, the winds will be increasing here in the high wind watch out for the Bristol Bay area. And tomorrow, this low, really not moving northward all that fast. The front coming out a little bit faster, but beginning to slow down since the low center is hanging back to the southwest a little bit there. Almost getting another development here in the lee side of the Alaska Peninsula. Almost trying to develop there, so that's going to definitely kick the winds up again here for Bristol Bay, especially in advance of the front. Look for some full gales here, maybe even storm force winds possible for the Bristol Bay marine areas. And again, with the high wind watch out, gusts possibly to 75 miles per hour. And then northwest winds continuing here, but really starting to dry out a little bit as this front pushes eastward and gathers all the moisture back with that system. And warmer conditions, high pressure moving across the Adak-Atka area, so pretty light winds tomorrow and some variable clouds. And this front again, the moisture linking up with the leftover stuff, so rain back up into western Prince William Sound, down towards Seward, up the west side of Cook Inlet, but dry from Kenai or Anchor Point northward into Anchorage, and could be a fair amount of sunshine, maybe, for the Susitna Valley, and back across much of the northern interior. Copper River Basin looking really good. Those winds down now. Of course, the wind advisory due to end any time from 6 p.m. or after. And then rainfall advancing back to the southwest or the southeast coast here, but the upper level high really holding that at bay. So just a chance of rain right along the outer coastline tomorrow afternoon. And whatever gets up to Yakutat or even Cordova will be quite light of the sprinkle variety with some overcast skies. Nothing will get into Valdez, but you'll probably end up with that usual clouds and occasional rain, low visibility conditions in Whittier and possibly over to Portage as well. This frontal boundary up here, no weather associated with that, just some mid and high level clouds here over the eastern Arctic coast back down toward maybe as far south as Eagle. And taking a look at the Tuesday forecast, we'll see this front breaks off a little bit, forms a separate low center. So that's going to spread some rain changing to snow and snow showers in across the Adak and then Atka area. And the dry slot between the two systems that will be over the central Aleutians tomorrow will shift over to Unalaska on Tuesday, and then Nikolsky looking for an increasing chance of rain through the afternoon. This leftover low pressure area, actually the one slowly moving northward and maintaining itself well enough with a high pressure now over south central Alaska that's beginning to redevelop back to the west. So that keeps a very tight gradient here. Southwest Kodiak Island up across Bristol Bay over the Aleutian Range. So still looking at gusts anywhere from 30 to as high as 50 miles an hour here, coming around right into the King Salmon area. Again, all along the southwest coast there. The Cape Newnan probably seeing gusts of 50 miles an hour and very windy conditions up across Nunivak Island as well. Rain or snow possible for St. Lawrence Island, but a dry day in over the Norton Sound area, and just some clouds for the Seward Peninsula. Mostly fair over the interior, again with the light wind conditions. Areas of low clouds and fog possibly forming and tending to linger throughout the day here over the interior valley areas. And same thing up over the eastern interior, but nothing too terribly extensive at this point in time. Couple of weak lows here will keep it mostly cloudy and occasionally damp over the southeast coast. It looks like the heaviest rainfall, though, will remain just offshore and down to the south over the Dixon entrance area with some occasional light rain at times into Klawock and Metlakatla and those areas there. High pressure out in the Gulf of Alaska here in between. That actually extends right up into the interior. So looks like a good VFR day for the North Slope and Arctic coast with general offshore flow there. Could see some east winds up to 25, 30 miles an hour on the east side in gusts, but getting kind of light and variable back on the west side to southeast, maybe up to 20 across the Chukchi Sea, but lighter in toward Kotzebue and Selawik. Temperatures this afternoon up to 55 degrees there at Denali Park, the entrance there, and that signifies the 9,000-foot freezing level they had over Fairbanks this afternoon, and with the that elevation of that station is about 1,720 feet, in contrast to the lower elevation of Minchumina over here. So you get out of the wind and maybe lose the clouds, barely getting over 20 this afternoon, quite a contrast there. With 21 degrees, 29 at Fairbanks. They were warmer earlier, but then dropped off. Delta Junction, still windy, 36 degrees there, 24 at Gulkana. Cordova came in with 50 degrees today, and across the southeast coast, mostly ranging from 32 at the state capital to 43 down at Heidelberg. And up farther to the north, all above zero, all the reporting stations above zero here along the Arctic coast, ranging from, well, 5 to 10 degrees on the central and east coast, 10 degrees at Arctic Village. Anatuvik south winds 25 degrees there, and 18 at Point Lay, 26 at Cape Lisburne. And up above freezing here, Kivalina, Kotzebue, mid-30s, 32 at Selawik, 25 Shishmaref, 37 degrees at 4 p.m. at Nome. They were up, I think, in the lower 40s earlier today, but 25 over at Savunga, 40 degrees on Alaska. Same thing here at Hooper Bay, mid-40s to upper 40s. Sparivon, 49 degrees. 46 here at Sleepmute, 42 Bethel, and 36 at Macoriac. Same thing at St. Paul and St. George, mid-30s, upper 30s eastern Aleutians, 40 degrees here. Nelson Lagoon, southeast gust 50 this afternoon, 32 degrees in the colder air back over Adak. Lows tonight, upper 20s to upper 30s here for the Panhandle, otherwise lower 40s right along the coastline to kind of a range depending on where it's cloudy and where the wind's blowing. Warmer in those areas and cooler where there's no wind. Like up here over the interior, not a lot of wind expected. Could drop back down below zero a little bit there at Arctic Village and near zero along the Arctic coast. Very mild here over the southwest part of the state. Lower to mid 40s, near 40 for the peninsula, 30 for the Pribilofs, lower 30s for the Aleutians. Highs tomorrow, teens up over the Arctic coast and North Slope. Brooks Range though, again, higher elevation with that warm air aloft. Anywhere from 30 to 35 degrees and looks like above freezing all the way out to the coastline there. Upper 30s, Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, Nome, White Mountain and those areas to 40 over at Kobuk and 44, mid-40s. A very mild day coming up again, 45 to 50 here over the southwest interior. Mid to upper 40s for south central Alaska, 40s for the Panhandle, 30s out over the Aleutians. And looking ahead to, or moving on to flying weather, IFR again, that system slowly moving northward, a lot of moisture coming with it. IFR conditions, southern, western Prince William Sound, southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, and that same pattern again up the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. That's where the conditions will be lowest, again over the Kilbrook Mountains, and mostly along the Pacific side of the peninsula until you get out there near Cold Bay. Unalaska IFR, maybe for the Pribilofs as well. Gradually becoming marginal VFR, kind of increasing and becoming a little more extensive right along the coastline of the Panhandle. Passes Anatuvik wide open tomorrow, as will Adigan be. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR developing on the eastern approaches, staying VFR on the west side, something in between through the pass. Same forecast for rainy as Lake Clark and Merrill. Windy though, VFR, either approach, Isabel, good VFR, north and south. Same forecast from Mentasta. And for Tanita, VFR in the east or the west entrance the entire day. The pass, VFR becoming marginal. East side, VFR becoming IFR. For Portage, VFR conditions to start with and then gradually becoming IFR into the afternoon toward this time tomorrow. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR all day. Freezing levels here showing 8,000 feet backing out to the west coast here with 4,000 feet into the Bering. Actually, that's 2,000. 4,000 goes with that line, but the surface all the way up into Kotzebue Sound and then kind of meandering back down along the North Gulf Coast to a pattern something like that. And a little bit of a swath here of cold air remaining over the central Bering Sea and the Aleutians. The next push of warm air coming northward there over the western areas with the next storm. And with that will be some icing threats below 10,000 feet out there in the west. And also some icing here below 11,000 feet right along that Arctic and frontal boundary zones here over the eastern Bering Sea. And some of that could slip on up into Kodiak Island, but looks like not much of a threat icing at all with that band of moisture coming up. Could be some spotty areas right along the coastline. And the upper level wind flow chart shows the slow movement of that front due to the more east to west flow of the jet stream here with a lot of cold air to the south, warm air up over the interior. That inverts the flow to an easterly direction here. So that's going to result in a slow northward movement of that frontal system. And at 9,000 feet, southeasterly is very brisk here. Strong southeast winds up to 60 knots. Same thing at 3,000 feet, 50 to 60 knots here right across Kodiak Island from Cook Inlet, across the Alaska Range, the Aleutian Range. Northwest 45 again for the eastern Aleutians, lighter up along the coast, kind of brisk through the central interior, and southeast 25 to 30 here over the Panhandle, and a big increase in the winds out over Shemya. Turbulence-wise, severe below 6,000 feet, southern Kenai Peninsula in the shaded areas here, all of the western Alaska Range, the Alaska Peninsula, possibly the eastern Aleutians with moderate chop right up into the Bering Strait and also along the central Alaska Range. And after the break, I'll be back with the boating forecasts.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's a dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the earth, explosion type things, coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the northern lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the northern lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back, and I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling. You know, it's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get 1 hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, you're elevated, levitating, you're lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything, so you got to remember that luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even.
Welcome back. Southeasterlies 20 to 25 knots along the outer coastline. East, maybe up to 20 knots there over the southern inside waters, but lighter and more northeasterly up to the north. For Tuesday, light variable winds here on the north coast, becoming northeast about 15 to easterly 20 to southeast into the small craft advisory range down along the south coast. East up to 20, and again lighter winds for the central and northern inside waters. For the North Gulf Coast tomorrow, minimum gales develop into maximum gales here over the western part of the coast to storm force winds possibly from the east or east-northeast. For the Barren Islands, gales east-northeasterlies for Kachemak Bay, gales for the Shelikof Strait area, and then dropping back to 25 knots in the afternoon for the east side of Kodiak Island. Pretty windy conditions, especially south of the Forelands for Cook Inlet. And then becoming light variable conditions under developing high pressure here, just variable 5 over Cook Inlet, east 20 knots for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. And then those winds increase significantly. I got 25 in here, but you could have gales down at Sitkinak and 30 for Shelikof Strait. Out for Bristol Bay tomorrow, east winds 30 knots, becoming northeast 15 here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, and north 20 from Sandpoint to Cape Sarachev, and then from Sandpoint on up to Sitkinak, southeast 25. For Tuesday, kind of a sharp contrast in winds here, southwest 10 for the peninsula, east 40 for Bristol Bay, and southeast 25 Sitkinak over to say Chignik. And for the eastern Aleutians, northwesterlies 25 to 35 knots, higher gusts tomorrow, dropping back to 15 to 20 knots here for the central areas. And then with that system coming in, south winds up to 40 knots at some point in the day tomorrow for the western areas. And then those will become west and come back up to 35 knots after dropping off tomorrow afternoon and overnight tomorrow night. Back up to 35 knots, southwest 25, spreading into ADAC. Otherwise, high pressure ridge shifting through northwest. For some reason held onto a layer of arrows there, but those will be northwest 25 for the eastern Aleutians. And for the southwest coast here, Nunivak Island down to Cape Newenham, 25 knots out of the east tomorrow, tending to increase here late tomorrow. North 20 for the Pribilofs, and easterlies 15 to 20 for the remainder of the Bering Sea. On Tuesday, small craft advisories, brisk wind advisories here for the St. Lawrence Island area, down the coastline, east 30 there out of Kuskokwim Bay, light winds for the Pribilofs. Up along the Arctic coast, strongest winds will be on the east side, up to 25 knots at times, 15 on the central coast, 15 to 20-ish here for the west side, light winds for the Chukchi Sea. Then more southeasterly, come up a little bit to 20 knots here, light variable winds for the western coast, no change on the east side or even the central areas. For tonight, fair over the interior here with light winds and some areas of low clouds and fog, but nothing too widespread. More rain and wind shifting back to the north here ahead of this front. Some of that moisture may work all the way up to Prince William Sound late tonight. This stuff tending to pull off the coast, Arctic boundary stationary over the eastern Bering Sea, and then the next storm pushing into the western Aleutians. But tomorrow this front coming over. By this time tomorrow, this front will probably be over Fognac Island and in a little closer to the coast there. But high wind warning out, or watch out for Bristol Bay. Not too bad over the interior. And then for Tuesday, again, high pressure beginning to expand its domain of influence farther to the west. So that's going to create a very tight pressure.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.